Hello, my name is Debbie. I'm Owlandgator Stitcher. Welcome to Flosstube number 70. This is a video mainly about cross stitch, sometimes about what I'm reading and watching and life thrown in, but all of that is put towards the end. Today is December 31st, 2024, so of course New Year's Eve. And if you are watching this on New Year's Eve, I hope that you celebrate safely and enjoy your day. Or if you're like me and you prefer to go to bed at a reasonable hour and have your neighbors not wake you up, I hope that works out well for you too. Our neighbors are a very good bunch on our street, but they do like to set off fireworks for all of the holidays. So I probably will get woken up at midnight, but I am definitely these days go to bed early and get up very early. So staying up to midnight is not a good recipe for me. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and show you all of my stitching because I have a lot to show. But the first thing I want to show is something that I forgot to show in my last video. My last video was a little bit different. I showed you all my finishes of 2024 and I forgot this little guy. So this was a little kit that I got as an insert in the world of cross stitching. I honestly don't remember which issue it came in, but I just think it was a really cute little rabbit and it came with everything. So the Ada, all the floss, the pattern obviously, and this little card. You're supposed to sort of make it into a card, so I'm just going to pull it out here because I have not affixed it. So that's what he looks like outside of the card. And it was a fun little stitch, but I have to say a lot of these that have this kind of back stitching where it doesn't follow the holes where you normally would be. And this is the kit fabric they gave me. It's Ada, but it was a lot of piercing of that Ada. So I think I got all the cross stitching done and about half the back stitching, and then like my stitching session finished whenever that took me a couple of days. I finished that stitching session and moved on to something else. And it did take me a couple of months to move back to this simply because that back stitching was hard to follow. And I was in the lower bit as well. And then there was a part of me that said, you know what? It doesn't really matter where those little like fur marks go. It just doesn't matter. So try and follow closely, but don't worry about it. I then ran out of floss that they gave me in the kit while I was doing the whiskers. So I pulled out what I thought was the equivalent and was an exact match, but I wasn't going to pull out all of my back stitching to put in the correct color. Or the color that I had, basically I thought it was 3799. They did not mention it on the pattern. It just sort of said like dark gray. So I just let it go. I don't think anyone can tell that the whiskers are two different shades of gray. So I just wanted to show that. I forgot to show that earlier. And so now moving on to my actual stitching. The first piece I have to show you, this is the Blue Flower, and this is Summer Squirrel. The Blue Flower is one of my favorite designers, and I'm very excited because I'm attending a retreat in May that she will be there as one of the guest designers. There's 2 guest designers. So I'm really excited to finally get a chance to meet her. As I say, I respectfully stalk her, which means that, whenever like in the Jingle Ball, she has meet and greets, I always attend those. And I did her class last year and all of that, but obviously I'm not stalking her in real life. Nothing creepy, but I am very excited to have a chance to finally meet her in person and just see a lot of the great stitching because I'm sure there'll be a brag table. But anyhow, I started this one for Beth, the Steadfast Stitcher. She had a birthday sal in December, and it was to start or work on any piece that has an animal. And it was very loose, whatever animal you wanted. I really wanted to do something with fur, but there are plenty of people who do birds and other animals, and Beth is very open and loose, and she just wants people to celebrate her birthday with her and stitch, doing something that she loves. So here is where I got. This was basically one day of stitching, so just started in the upper left-hand corner, did a little bit of the border, and then this flower motif. So easy to read pattern, a lot of fun. Always happy to start another blue flower. And this had been kitted up in my stash for quite a while. The fabric is a 32 count linen, vintage gray. The color itself is fine. I'm a bit annoyed with where I purchased it from because they had the color name safety pinned in, and when I pulled it out, I noticed that the safety pin left a mark. It's on the edge of the fabric. It's nowhere near where I'm stitching. It's not even there. But even if I ended up stitching down in this corner, which this piece I certainly would not, it would be cut off probably during the framing process. But wasn't thrilled, and I also got this fabric and it wasn't serged or anything, so I no longer buy from that vendor because there are plenty of great fabric dyers who, and this is not even hand dyed, but so this is just an online store that do serge the fabric for you when you purchase it. So that is my first piece. Second piece that I have to show you, this was one of my Whip Go calls from 2024. So this is another blue flower piece. This is the Gentle Rain. So really sweet little piece, and it's I have to put my glasses on to read it. How sweet is the music of the rain. And so here's where I am. This is a 32 count even weave Frost from Bestitch Me. This one went into timeout for a long time because I had started, you can see there's two trees, and I was using sort of going back and forth. I mean, I think I was sort of working in both of these areas, but I had done a center start here, and the way my key snap was, and I miscounted somewhere, and I just couldn't figure out where the mistake was. And so I ended up, I didn't have a huge amount, but I ripped out everything that I had done in this tree. And so after I did that, that was a while ago, and I had worked a little bit on it, but this time I picked it up and I put in about 500 stitches, and I put in like all these white flowers. I put in more leaves, and then put in one of the colors of what I think are robins, but these birds here. So really enjoyed working on that. And it's always nice when you sort of, after you've had a piece of time out for a while, to sort of get over that psychological barrier and pick it up and actually work on it. Okay, so the next pieces I am going to show you, I am, as many of you know, I play a lot of the Facebook games related to stitching, and it just helps motivate me maybe to stitch a little bit more than I would. I stitch a lot anyhow, and I probably would, but it helps me motivate sometimes, like if I need 100 stitches on something and I hit 78, maybe I would quit and I'll just put in this extra 22 stitches or whatever. One of the games that I'm playing is Fandom Stitching Central, I think that's what they call it. And one of the challenges they had this month was their theme for 2024 was Disney. They're moving on next year to Supernatural and Doctor Who. But so they did in December, they had an Epcot event, and they basically said pick 11 different pieces, put in 500 stitches, but all of the pieces the designers have to be from other countries. Like each country has to be different. So I was able, with some creative, with the blessing of the admins of that group, to come up with designers, or at least artists of design companies that from 11 different places. So first one I have to show you is Old World Map. This is from Artisy. This is an Australian company. And so see if I can get this whole thing in. So here's the whole piece. This is my oldest project. I started it in December 2019. So it's now, it hit its fifth birthday on Christmas. I started at Christmas 2019. And so where I worked this time was over here. So the way I had the Q snap, I was picking up ninja stitches and then sort of pulling the color across. And then when I would get tired of, working on 20 stitches at a time in that color, I would then pick up something and work in that yellow piece there. That is a very large urn, I think, or a large vase. I don't know exactly what it is. And so I put in colors there. So it's coming out lovely. My goal is to get this all the way across to the other. I'm over halfway. So to get it all the way across there, I would love, that's the direction I'm working. So, oops, my finger minder is sticking to the metal on my desk. So that was the first piece. And I also should mention the other piece that I worked, actually the very first piece I worked on for was for Russia. I did an Alforce embroidery piece, Swan Lake, but I showed the finish in my last video, so I'm not going to show it again here. And also, these are not in the order but I stitched them in the game. They're just the order that they piled up on my desk. The next one I stitched on is a Chatelaine. This is, I always get the order of the words wrong, Holland Springtime Garden Mandala. So it's lots of motifs from Holland, and the designer who has now passed away, but she is from Germany. So I am still very early days on this. I am in the center motif. I have managed to collect all the supplies. I did most of it through European Cross Stitch, but the Glorianas I didn't get from them because the way they have it, you can order it without the Glorianas from them, but if you do order the Gloriana threads from them, they'll ship everything together, so it could take up to a year. So I managed to, I think from 2 or 3 vendors, find the Glorianas I needed. It took me a few months, but I could do that. I am also not using the MPI silk that it calls for. I'm just using the DMC. I think it looks great the way it is, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work on this. Next designer I have is from Ukraine. It's Fairy Tale Motifs. This is Stitchy Princess Black. Horrible printout, I know. And here's where I am on this one. This one is a 16 count Picture This Plus J. I'm sorry I haven't mentioned all my fabrics. It's been a while since I've done a Flosstube. I got to get back into it. So while that was a horrible printout, it is done on a more neutral fabric. I chose to go with this blue. The green is fading a little bit into it, but I'm not so worried about that. The white really pops, and that's important because you get all those beautiful birds that are in white. So really enjoying working on this one. Okay. Next designer is from Canada, Sarcy Girl. This is the Pandemic Sampler, which she very kindly gave us all for free in 2020. And here is where I am now. Oops. So this is a 32 count even weave from Fortnite Fabrics, which is no longer Dyeing Fabrics, and the color is called Panther Cap. So basically I think I still have to do the eye on the chicken. But I definitely was working in here, and I had some of the flowers and the borders up here that I worked on as well. So that is Pandemic Sampler. Next piece I worked on is Let Freedom Ring by Leela Studio, because if we have Christmas in July, why can't we stitch July and Christmas? But anyhow, one of the reasons why I picked this one up was I said this country was the Philippines. The designer is based in the US, and she's been here for decades as far as I can tell, but she is originally from the Philippines, and I don't think she moved to the US until she was an adult, so the admin said that works. So I worked on this. And it's definitely a 32 count linen. Maybe it's Heartland. I have to look a little bit more carefully, and I don't have the piece of paper with me. So here's all I've stitched so far. And what I worked on this time mainly was the soldiers and then that green line. I had a dangling thread, and I remembered what happened was last time I worked on it, I was working on this at a retreat. And because it's a linen, I miscounted. I didn't have my proper magnifier. I miscounted, and I think I did either over 1 or over 3. And so I caught that, and I wasn't that far on the line. I didn't have a huge amount to frog, but obviously it's annoying when you have to frog anything. And so I think I frogged it, and then I left it, the thread dangling, because I was sort of undone. So I finished that thread and worked on those guys a little bit. So just Let Freedom Ring. Okay, the next one. This is Winter's Wisdom. This is part of the Songbird series from Cottage Guarded Sampling. This was another one, and there's a chat that was associated with the event, and there was some discussion about where is she from. Go to her website, and she talks about going to art school and lots of other personal things, but she doesn't actually say where she is from. There is some indication that she says to shop owners that she ships from Malaysia. So we all just decided that she is from Malaysia. It might not be true. I don't, part of me says it doesn't matter where the person comes from. What matters is her awesome designs, because I think she's a brilliant designer. And so we all agreed that we were just going to say she's from Malaysia. If you do actually know where she was from, just drop it in the comments below, because for my curiosity. And so this was another one that was in timeout for a long time, because I tried to do a color conversion and it failed miserably. I may be ripping out this bit here because it was too variegated. I'm undecided, but I worked on this bird here. So I think I'm going to just do a lot, and then when I get to the point that I get more in, how much is that going to bother me? So, but the bird, I'm sorry, he's headless right now. He'll get his head in. This, I don't have the tag on this, but it is another 32 count even weave, and I can almost guarantee it is another Fortnite's Fabrics. I, a few years ago, they had one of their fabric clubs was gray. And so you would get a different shade of gray every month. And so I with the exception of that one piece vintage gray that I showed at the very beginning where I complained about the stain on it, all my gray fabrics, and certainly if they're even weave right now, they all have come from Fortnite Fabrics. Okay, next piece I have to show, this was also a Whip Go piece. This is Chester's Place. For those of you who have been stitching for a while, you may recall that Jennifer did a fundraiser. Her sister was adopting a cat from a shelter, but it needed like $2,000 worth of dental care. And so she did a fundraiser, and like within 12 hours, she raised enough money to cover the cost of the dental care for the cat. And so Jennifer was originally like, okay, that's it. But then she ended up re-releasing it and saying that some of the proceeds from that would go to supporting the animal shelter where the cat came from, because there were plenty of cats and dogs who needed veterinary care. So I bought it during the second phase. This is what it looks like. Like a lot of people, I probably will change the bottom and put more cats. Two of my cats who passed away, and then the two I have now. But we're not even close to that, so I'm not worrying about it. This is done on a 16 count, or is it 18 count? 18 count Ada from Picture This Plus, the color Shale. And here's what I have now. So basically this time I put in 1,000 stitches. So I had done about half the roof, so I finished that. I think I have 2 of the chimneys done, so I did the other chimney, and then I started working down. That's why you can see the brickwork going down, and I put in all of the sort of whitish color there as well. And this was US, if I didn't say that originally. So that was the easiest designer for me, because many of my designers are American one way or the other. Next piece I picked up was Princess Lily from, and I'm going to say this name horribly, La Petite Croix de Lucie. It's probably not how you pronounce it. I don't speak French, but this is a French designer. It's a cute little pattern. And this is done on I think it's either 28 or 32 count pink witch oat fabric, not hand dyed, but it is pink. And so everything I put in here was on all the pink stitches that you see. That's what I put in this time. So cute, working on the body of the carriage. Okay, the next piece, White Owl from Artisy. Artisy is an Australian company. I take this all back. Artisy is an Australian company, that is correct. However, I did not use this for Australia. What I used it for, so the artist is Kayomi Hirai. And while she lives in the US, she is originally from Japan. So we were able, especially these full coverages where the artist is different from the charting company, we were able to use the artist instead of the company. So this was Japan. And everything is sticking. So here's where I am on this. And I worked basically some of this blue color here. There were a lot of sort of gaps in here. So I can't remember if it's 820 or one of those around there. Did a lot of that and just took that color and basically came in and then started filling in here, and then as well as some of this over here. I really do need to start picking up the navy. There's a lot of navy in that sky, and it's not a huge amount left. I mean, because I just need to do, I mean, there are a few other colors, but this bit here, and then you can see the wing sort of comes up here. So then in here, but it does get a little bit boring to stitch the same thing. On the one hand, Artisy patterns are great because when you get that kind of background, there's not a huge amount of confetti. Obviously in the owl, there will be a lot of confetti, but she does, you know, rather than saying, oh, we're going to alternate two different shades of navy, so here's 939 and 823, and it's totally arbitrary how they're placed, she'll just do block stitching, and I do appreciate that. But then at the same time, doing 1,000 stitches of that at the same time, I think I had done it over here, a lot of it, and it just got a bit tedious. Having said that, this is my focus piece for 2025. I would like to get it finished. I'm about 28% done. This is 18 count Ada. That is, I think, about 40,000 stitches, given I did the Haidsow this year, which was 58,000 stitches. This shouldn't be a problem. I do stitch, because this is 2 strands, I do stitch a little bit more slowly on 18 count than I do on the 22 count, which I did for the Haidsow because I only used 1 strand, but it's also a lot fewer stitches. And quite frankly, I think, well, when I get into the owl, it will be slow, but that works out to about 4,000 stitches a month. I'd have to do the math again because I did it at the beginning of December, and then I put some stitches into it. And the last piece I have to show you that I worked on, this is Simple Pleasures, charted by Paint Free Crafts, and the artist is Chris Dunn. I love all of Chris Dunn's artworks, just the way that he gives so much life to the animals and animals in his work. And so she's from the United Kingdom, and so that's what I use this one for. And this is where it is. And basically I put in about 5,000 stitches on this month. I just wanted something simple. I'd finished the Haidsow in mid-November, and I just wanted something simple that I could focus on. So I think, I mean, it wasn't a straight line, obviously, because I'm using Pattern Keeper. So some of this hay or straw, whatever it is, has sort of come over. But basically from about here all the way over. So like this whole lantern is starting to come in. This is not quite the edge. The edge, I think from counting from here, there's about 15 more stitches. But my key snap, because I was trying really hard to get the stuff into here. So I hold this up. I couldn't, the Q snap wasn't quite long enough. So I just decided fill in as much as you can over here. And then next time you work on it, pull it out. I have to say I did burn out on this a little bit. It is the one that I have next to my stitching chair in our living room where my husband and I watch TV in the evenings. And I think after doing Turner Abbey with all of that brown, to have another piece that has a lot of brown, it just sort of getting to me. So I didn't bring it out, but the last piece, so the past couple nights, I've been working on a very colorful piece in there, which just for 2 or 3 days, and then it will go back after tonight because I have plans. I talked about my plans in my last video, so I'm not going to necessarily go into a lot of details, but I am going to show you what I am working on for the month of January. And I am doing WIPGO. Let's see if I can easily find my WIPGO board. I am doing it differently. I did a couple of years ago. I did for I think 2 years where I'd put a project in, Jessie Marie would call the numbers, and I would work on that. And I think towards the end of the second year, that got a little bit tedious for me. And so I sort of decided, I took a year off, and then 2024, what I did was I did what basically you can see here. This is my 2025 chart. So basically I just said I have numbers 1 through 25. I have all my projects stacked up on an index cards, and after I work on a project, it goes to the bottom of the pile. It doesn't matter if I worked on it the day before or if it's something I haven't worked on in 6 months. Pull the card, put it at the bottom of the pile so that the one on top is the one I have not worked on in the longest period of time. So when she calls the numbers, all I do is I count down. So it was 11 and 20. So I don't remember which one is first, but I just count down to 11, pull that card, and then I keep going to 20. I don't start over from the top again. So that is basically my whip go board. And that way it's a randomization, but it's also using my whip go board to pick up things that I haven't worked on in a while. Because what I was finding was I was working on the same 10 to 15 projects. And that's great because that means I obviously get a lot more progress in them. But I sort of feel like my whips are like my kids. I mean, not really. I don't even have kids. But, I know all my whips. I think I have 70 whips that I talk about. I have 2 others, which are round robins. So I don't show them because a lot of the work isn't mine. But I sort of, I'll show you my plans a little bit more, my organization, my plans, I should say. My train of thought just went, and we're over 20 minutes into this video, so I'm not going to restart. Basically, this allows me to pick up something that I haven't worked on in a while and sure it gets some love. And if it folds into my plans for the month, that is great. So one of my whip go, and then, so what you see here are just, I write in what it is. And then my idea is to take some sort of colored pencil and color it in, assuming I completed it. I also do my whip go for the month. If I don't get everything in there, like if I don't get the stitches in that I'm supposed to get, then I don't carry it over to the next month. To me, that just adds more pressure. So my whip go call is His Eye is on the Sparrow from Heartstring Samplery. I think many of you know this piece. I'm doing it on a 36 count. I think it's pictured as plus the balloon, 1/2. And again, 36 count is not necessarily my easiest one to stitch. And so this has been very slow going for me. And I also, as I talked about in my last video, I took all my pieces at the end of 2022 and gave a goal for them. So my goal on this was just to get a page finished, and I still haven't gotten there, but I'm getting closer. So I think I will work on the basket down here, and then there's a deer. I have gone all the way across the top on page 1, and the flowers are done for page 1 and just some of the greenery. So not sure exactly how many stitches it is. My whip go is that if I have not hit the goal, put in 1,000 stitches, and if I have hit the goal or it doesn't have a goal, which some of my newer pieces don't have goals, then just stitch on it for a day. So that is my first piece, the first whip go piece. My second whip go piece is Lindy Stitches. I forget the rest. And here's where this is. This is another piece that I don't have labeled with the color right here. It's a gray. It is a linen though, so I know it's not Fortnite fabrics. So here's where I am. Again, this went into timeout for a long time because even though I was using the call for colors, I didn't like the color that was called for was too similar to, it was very yellow, and I wanted something that looked like that, the color here. Because I didn't like the color in the wing was too close to the color of the belly of the bird. And I wanted that contrast. I didn't want to have 2 sort of beige owls. Not that there's anything wrong with beige, but I wanted my owls to have a little bit of, contrast. So at some point I picked out everything I had done, which was a couple hundred stitches, and found, I think this is chickpea, and put that in. So my goal is 1,000 stitches for whip go, but I actually really plan to put a lot of love into this, and I hope to finish it this month. My next piece, so I will get in and show this. I'll show you something after after I show you what I plan to work on. But WIP has a birthday in January, and I'm trying this year, or in 2025, to touch when a WIP has a birthday. And that way, again, it's another way for me to bring out projects that I haven't worked on in a while. I mean, some of them I work on all the time, so if they have their birthday, great. And I don't necessarily have to have it on its birthday. I think that sometimes puts a little stress on me, that if I'm busy that day and I don't touch it, then I just skip it, and that's not the goal of stitching on its birthday. So I'm saying it's birthday week. So this is the only project I have ongoing right now that I started in January. And that probably has a lot to do with I did new starts for a couple of years. So this is Festive Lamppost. This is from an issue of The World of Cross Stitching. This is what the front looks like. This is the one I'm doing in here. And I have not gotten very far on this because, again, as much as I love this, it's just one that, because I have 70 WIPs, doesn't get picked up that often. So here's where it is now. So obviously all I've done is the very top of the lamppost. And this is done on a 32 count even weave, color Cardinal from Bestitch Me. I used to be in her Fabric of the Month club. I stopped all my Fabric of the Month clubs, not because I didn't love the fabrics. I had Color of Cotton, I had this, I had Fortnite fabrics, but I stopped all of them because I have a lot of fabric. And when I go to retreats and I see the gorgeous fabric there, then I end up buying more. And I also sometimes look at my stash, and either I'm doing like a large Mira and it doesn't fit well on a fat quarter. I'm not as brave as Kitschy WIPs, where she will go within like a 1/2 inch of a border. That's not me. I don't necessarily need my full 3 inches, but if I don't have 2 inches, I'm a little uncomfortable. So that's why I no longer am in Fabric of the Month club. Okay, so the next 3 pieces I'm going to show you. These are for Daily 30 and Cross Stitchers Journal. They have a yearly challenge, and the one for 2025 is we all sort of blind had to pick a designer and then list 3 projects for that designer that we either had WIPs or we wanted to start. It didn't matter, but the idea was that you had to concentrate on one designer and you had to pick 3 different projects. So of course I did have Unearthed Designs. I have I think I only have 4 paid projects right now ongoing. I obviously a lot more of their charts, but they 3 I'm showing you I think are my 3 largest projects, and so they need some love. And the idea, so you pick them blindly. We now know what it is, which is in increments of 500, stitch on these projects. There's no particular order that you have to do it. You could even, in that grouping of 500, do 300 on one and 200 of another. But the idea is you picked a designer because you probably love that designer. Let's give some love to those projects. So the 3 projects I picked are Magic Study, artwork by Rose Kahn. This is the rainbow version. She is no longer with Heaven and Earth Designs. I know she has some with Pain Free Crafts, but she may also be working with another company. This, obviously it was recharted, but this one, I think you can get, if not this one, then the original one, which is much more purples and blues. One of the design companies have it, but you cannot get it from Heaven and Earth Designs. So there's this one is now. So lots of, I have finished I don't remember exactly where the page is, but I did do that. This is not a max color or anything, so I know when I pick it back up, I'm going to start working here, and this is a lot. You can sort of see there are a few stitches in there, a few ninja stitches, but this is fairly solid here. So whenever I do pick this up again, it will be relatively quick stitching, and that is done 1/1 on 25 count. Next one I have is Little Cake Shop, artwork by Amy Stewart. She is still available on Heaven and Earth Designs, so if you're interested in any of her charts, you can still get them there. This is supersized max color, or actually I take it back. It may just be max color. I don't think it's supersized. I don't know if this particular one is offered in supersized, but it's definitely max color. So here's where I am on that one. This is my starting point. So I have sort of been working my way across in the ceiling. You can sort of see. And that's my intention to continue to do that. Now, if I get a challenge where I have to do, 1,000 stitches in pink, this is a great one to do. And I may just, work down so I can get my X number of stitches in pink or whatever it is I need to do. But the idea is to work across in that ceiling. And that is done on a 22 count, 1/1. And my last piece, this is Supersize Max Color, Grand Library, another piece, a artwork by Amy Stewart. Love this piece. This is my work on it because you want to work on it. Don't stress yourself out because you probably won't get it done in your lifetime. And I'm okay with that, especially because the parts that I really like are the center motif and the romance one here. Now, she did do chart what she calls quick stitches for both of those areas. A quick stitch is a bit of a misnomer. They are basically crops of those areas of the chart, which have then been blown up and charted with much more detail than you would get in something like this, even though this is 715,000 stitches. But I think when I did the math, doing those two areas in those quick stitches, it's not much different than, they're less than this one, but it's not a lot less. And I'm enjoying working all this. So I haven't even gotten to those parts yet. I'm still I think at 2.5%. So I'm still doing the mystery part right now. So I'm down here and I just love the way, even this part is coming together. So I'm not sad that I am doing the whole thing. I really like it. But I will get excited when I get to the parts that I really do like. So I basically have been pulling colors, sort of working my way across and pulling colors sort of in the vertical typewriter method. So I'll be looking forward to getting to where I can put that light in because it sort of feels like it's a big hole in the picture. But this is the mystery section, and you can see that, where I have been working most recently. The thief is really coming out with a piece of art under his arm. And this was a while ago, but I think I probably finished this off after I took my 9-month hiatus. I just love, you don't really know what you're working on when you're working on something that's detailed until you sort of step back. And I didn't realize what this was until I stepped back. And that is basically like a window on the brick wall that an apartment building. And when I realized what that was, I just loved it. So glad to have an excuse to work on that. So taking a page from Jen the Caffeinated Crafter. She's really gotten into her whiteboards. I don't know if she's still going to do the project boards, those huge cardboard things. That would definitely be too overwhelming for me. I would probably try and use it, fall out of the chair I'm sitting on, and I've got arms on this chair. So I've got some nice whiteboard. So, two things that I mentioned in my plans video. I have goals for all of my projects that I set at the end of 2022. And I got distracted in 2020. So I knew I was never going to finish them in 2023. They weren't annual goals. They were, let's give not equal love, but let's make sure we give love to all of your projects. And I did not, in 2024, focus on those goals. I had a piece that I was working on from start to finish. That I started in 2024, so it didn't have a goal, obviously in 22 that I established. I did the Haid Sow, which I never had planned. I also had a piece that I wanted to finish, Swan Lake, the goal, I was very close to finishing it at the beginning of 2024, but I just did the whole piece. All great things. Don't begrudge myself that I worked on it, but I do want to go back and work on those goals. So what I have done, and I've tied this in with one of the games as well, going back to Fandom Stitching Central. I know I'm getting those words mixed up. Basically, they have an annual thing in 2025. Pick 25 projects and put 2,025 stitches into each of those. It's difficult for people who have 3 or 4 whips. That doesn't really work for them. But when you're like me, and there are a lot of people in the game like me, it might have a hard time deciding about which projects you put your stitches in. but it's not hard to come up with 25 projects. So what I've done, I have 2 whiteboards here. I'm leaning over to get this one. This is the first one. This is boring to look at, I know. But basically, my 25 projects that I have on here are, you can see, my window reflected. My 25 projects are listed on here. And for that game, 23 of these are ones that I started in 2022 or earlier that I have not met my goals. And I think most of them require 2,000 stitches at least to hit their goal. I could be wrong about some of them, but I'm not. So it's a way to make my games help me achieve what I want to accomplish. The other 2 I have on here are ones that I know I'll be working on anyhow throughout the year. So it's sort of meant for me just to have it there. One is Simple Pleasures, which I just showed you because I love that. And I know for me, putting in 2,000 stitches over a course of a year on something like that isn't hard. The second one is my Chatelaine. I am going to the Queen City Stitch Retreat in July in 2025, and it's a Chatelaine retreat. And so I would like to get some progress. You saw my little piddly amount of progress on that. So that's the other one. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but those are the 25 projects that I will use for that. My plan is, obviously this is the beginning of the year, but I will, as I work on it, we'll do like, X amount / of 2025. So when I hit 2025, and then if I've hit the goal, there'll be a check mark or something. And this helps me have a visual as well. And the second board I have is also another one. So what you see at the bottom there are, so see, my handwriting is atrocious. So, I thought, do I get bigger boards and make it easier to read? And I'm like, I could write bigger, but it doesn't mean you're going to be able to read it better. So this is really a visual for me. But these projects here are ones that still need to have their goals met. But either, I don't know if I really need 2,000 stitches to get to each of these goals. So that's why I didn't include them there. And then this bit up here, I am with a group of friends of mine. Someone started a group where she encouraged us to come up with goals. What did you want to accomplish in 2025? Some people kept them very reasonable. I did not keep mine reasonable. So basically, these are my annual. So I have 43 goals that I have not met from my stack from 2022 and earlier. So right now that's at 0. Finishes, I mentioned in my plans video, I would like to get 8 pre-2025 starts finished in 2025. So for the goals, that works out to about 4 a month with a little bit of wiggle room for that. That works out to less than 1 a month. And new starts. I have so many kitted projects. And when I kit, it's fabric with a pattern and maybe some specialty floss. If it's DMC, I have a master set. I'm sorry, I'm looking over there because my master set is over there. And then put 1,000 stitches in, because if I just put a couple hundred stitches in, you pick it up 6 months later and you're like, what was I doing here? So I want to get good starts on them. And then, so I want to do one of those every month. And then 25 and 25, that's what I mentioned earlier with the Fandom Stitching Central. And then birthday. So obviously the birthday one, the number of birthdays for each project will change every month. But since I only have one, I am going to, right now, I only have to work on one. So it gives me, that part at least gives me an easy start to the year. So my goals, and so I'm trying to hit 4 goals a month. So the 4 goals, I want to hit the goal on White Owl, which was to get about 30%. And I'm at 28.5, given that I have to get 4,000 stitches a month on that goal is going to get hit no problem. The next 2 were ones that I worked on this past month, but I realized I'm really close to getting to those goals. And that is Pandemic Sampler and Fairy Tale Motifs. Everything is scattered, so I can't pull them out again. And let's pull out my notebook so I can see what wrote them all down. Oh, yes. And then the fourth one, which is going to be a push, is to finish, I forget the rest. That was Whip Go Draw. So if I want to accomplish Whip Go, I have to get to at least 1,000, but my goal is to finish it. But that requires, I think, thousands to get there. But again, focus on it. I put in between 15 and 20,000 stitches a month in, depending on how busy I am. Right now, January, I have no plans to travel, so it shouldn't be too hard. I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, I'm back. What I want to do was pick up my phone, one, because it was making a lot of noise over there, but two, I wanted to look at my new start. So what I've done is basically every new start is on that wheel. So yeah, you can see how many I have. It's a lot. And now my background is all getting freaked out because I'm showing this. So I thought we could pick the new start together. And if it's easy for me to dig out, I will show you what it is. So let's go see what the new start is. Nottingham. Let me go see if I can find Nottingham. Okay, I'm back, and the short answer is it was not easy to find Nottingham. I know exactly what it is. It's the Kathy Barrick one, and so you'll just get to see it next month when I show it. But the reason why everything got pulled out, and I have projects all over the place, and they're in bins, and I need to put the projects away that I have sitting next to me and everywhere around so I can get the bins out and look properly. I should do like Jen does, where she's just got everything and she reaches in. But I have 2 bins, and how do I decide which one? And I kind of know how some of them are organized in the bin, and so I'll be biased. So we're just going to let that one go. But I think many of you know Nottingham by Kathy Barrick. I am not using the silks that she calls for, so I'm pretty sure I'll just do the DMC conversion. I may still have to find one, but I know I have the fabric pulled for it. Okay, so that is all for the stitching. If that is all you're here for, again, have a great Happy New Year. If you want to stick around and hear about what I've been reading and watching and a little bit of life, feel free to stay. So, reading, I try every time on a video to talk about a book that I've read in the past month that I've really enjoyed. But I think what I want to do, since it's been so long since I've talked about books, I want to talk about the 2 best books that I read in 2024. I get many of my books from the library. Ignore those behind you. Those are ones I get really cheap, and they tend to be older. But like newer releases, I do get from the library. And the 2 that I really enjoyed this year, which I just can't stop raving about. One, I think a lot of people know. That is All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. It's kind of billed as a mystery, but I don't really feel like it's a mystery. The basic plot is that it starts in the 70s, and it's in a small town, I think in Missouri, and like teenage girls are disappearing, and they don't really know what is going on. And so the person who is taking them is in the process of taking someone else, and this another boy, a teenage boy, comes across what happened, comes across the actual, like the abduction in the moment, and manages to thwart the abduction of the girl, but then he himself gets abducted. And you kind of find out in the first 100 pages what happens, and it's a big, chunky, like 500 or 600 page book. You kind of find out, so that's why I don't really feel like it's a mystery, because for the most part, you know what happened to the abductees. But it's more about how the abduction impacts the lives of the people who were affected by it, the teenage girl whose abduction was thwarted, about and her family, about the best friend of the boy who was abducted, who also happens to be a girl, about the boy's grandmother who he lives with, about the sheriff of this small town where these abductions are taking place. And it's just really fascinating. And so I don't want to get into too much more with spoilers, but I think it covers like 20 or 30 years. So it goes on for quite a bit. So obviously we see all the characters grow up in adulthood and how they have reacted to this. And it was just very brilliantly written. And yes, it's a big chunky book, but really short chapters. So you get to page, some chapters are half a page. Some chapters are 4 or 5 pages. But it just really, really enjoyed it and sort of made you think about if that happened to someone in your life, how would it affect you? And just really well written. And I'd read other things by Chris Whitaker and I thought they were fine, but this one just felt like it was a step above for me. And then the other book I read was There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elise Shafak. And she's a world commuter, I think is what I read about how she describes herself. She is, I think, she's probably Turkish British. So she is certainly of Turkish origin. But I think she spent a lot of time growing up in the UK, and she may or may not be a British citizen, but she actually now lives, I believe, in Arizona in the US. So she's sort of a world person, and she writes some of her books in Turkish and some of them in English. So There Are Rivers in the Sky was initially written in English, so it's not a translated book. And it follows 3 timelines. So one is mid-19th century, one is in 2014, and one is in 2018. And you find out fairly quickly how 2 of the timelines are connected. And then the third one is a little bit, it's going to be connected because this woman is brilliant, but you don't really know how, especially because there's only 4 years between the timelines. But basically the 19th century is following a kid who is born in absolute poverty in London, but he's brilliant. And so he grows up and he ends up becoming obsessed with, I don't want to know if I want to call it a cuneiform. That might not be the right word. But this sort of tablet that is found. And he basically deciphers what's on the tablet. And so, yes, he's very poor. But because of his brilliance, he's able to get a good job and able to travel. Like they know it comes from what is today Eastern Turkey. And he goes to travel to see if he can find more of this tablet. And then the second storyline, the one in 2014, follows I don't know if she's a teenager, maybe she's a tweener, but a girl who is Yazidi. I think that's the right word. I always get confused because they're kind of the same, but Yazidi and Yazdi in Turkey, they call them one thing. In Armenia, they call them something else. But basically, they are not Muslim. They follow their own faith belief. And that group of people were ones who suffered terribly under ISIS, especially in Iraq, and just some of the horrible things that happened to them. But so knowing that part of the story, like the real stuff that happened, and she was talking about like going from like her village, and they want to do a pilgrimage to the, I want to say Lalesh Valley, and knowing sort of what happened there, like I kind of could see where this all was going. It was not going to be good for her. But it sort of follows her story. And then there is a woman, I think she's in her 30s, who's recently separated, divorced from her husband. And she lives in London, and she is, I don't know if she's a PhD, but she's an expert on water and just all the, how the stories get interconnected and the role of water and rivers. It's just brilliant. I mean, I could probably write a book that would be really bad, but it would have a plot of, here's some character development, here's a conflict, here's how it resolved. No one would want to read it because it would be horrible. But I could at least write 200 pages of something that no one would want to read, and it could be considered a story. But then I read something like this, and this woman's mind and the way that she connects everything is so brilliant. And it's like my mind could never go there. But I love going on the journey with someone like that. So that is There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elise Shafak. And if you're looking for something a little bit different, I think a lot of people have heard about All the Colors of the Dark, but not so much about that one. And I do highly recommend that one. What have I been watching? I watched obviously a lot of stuff in the past 9 months. But one show that we just finished watching recently was Shrinking. This is on Apple Plus, so I know it's not the most accessible streaming service, but I do find that Apple has some of the more innovative programming right now. And it's got, I think Jason Segel is his name, Harrison Ford, and a few other actors, obviously, because there's not just the 2 of them. Honestly, I'm kind of bad because there's a third lead, a woman whose name I can't remember. The 3 of them are psychiatrists, and basically the start of the show, which is now a couple seasons in, one of the characters, his wife had been killed in a drunk driving accident, and he absolutely falls apart. So it's basically about his teenage daughter, who basically, like, the neighbors start caring for her because, you know, she's a teenager. She doesn't need like someone to, like, you know, watch her after school, but, you know, there's still emotional development and she needs someone to help her. And the neighbors basically take on that role. And then you got Harrison Ford's character, who has Parkinson's. And then you've got this third woman who basically has a lot of commitment issues because she had a nasty divorce. And it just sort of follows them in their progress. And it is so brilliant. So the third season finished this month. I think it was the third season. And in this season, the person, the drunk driver, you meet him. He's also one of the producers of the show, and I cannot remember his name. I really should look this stuff up before I start the video. But you probably know him as Roy Kent, whatever, from Ted Lasso. So where that was, I'm going to drop an F-bomb every other word. This, yes, he drank and drive and did this horrible thing. But in this, he's a very mellow person who knows exactly what he did and has to live with the consequences of what he did and all the guilt and everything associated with that. So just the acting in this is brilliant. And so if you have Apple Plus, I highly recommend. And it's a comedy, but there's obviously a lot of serious things. Life stuff, relatively quiet December. My husband and I stayed in town. My mother came to our house for Christmas Day. So that was lovely to see her. And she lives in town, so I see her all the time, but, you know, nice to celebrate the holiday with her. And I live in Gainesville, Florida, home of the University of Florida, the Gators. My husband and I put on our Fairbrother fan hats, and we went to the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa because the Gators played, and they won. So we were very happy about that. We just drove down and drove back in the same day. As you know, I volunteer at my Friends of the Library. They were closed for the entire month of November for renovations. So they finally reopened. So I've been spending a lot of time there because there's there are 6 months between sales, but we lost over a month for the renovations, but donations were still coming in. So there's just a lot to do. You know, we lost 1/6 of our planning time, and then obviously the holidays, a lot of people out. So I love doing that. I'm an avid reader. Again, keep pointing to all my books here, most of which I got for 10 cents, because that's how they sell the price on the last day. So anyhow, with that, I'm now starting to ramble. So again, once again, Happy New Year. And I do look forward to coming back and doing more of these videos in 2025. Take care, everyone. Bye.